is the Flamingo and just generally sort of the direction of Ukraine's remarkably fast-paced innovation trajectory going to mean that we see more sort of components, machinery, whatever equipment coming out that could really change the battlefield over the next, I don't know, half a year or by next summer?
In my opinion, I mean, I think what Ukraine is doing right now is pretty effective. Hold the line, try the adversary along the front line, and then accelerate this momentum of attrition by striking deep behind the front line against these high-value strategic level targets. So I think that's very effective. And if Ukraine continues that, I think that poses huge issues for Russia in the medium to long term. I think when it comes to the missile arsenal, yeah, I think, Flamingo to some extent, it might be the beginning of something, right? Again, we have to see if the manufacturer can actually follow through on the promises. So that's not yet guaranteed. But this direction that Ukraine has now been able, so Ukraine basically moved, right, from fully reliant on Western suppliers for missile technology towards building its own long and deep strike capabilities that are light in nature, right, because of their rather restricted payload capacity, towards moving or in the direction of long and deep strike capabilities that are heavy in nature, right? I think that is a natural progression that we're seeing, and that is going to continue. And as this continues, that makes things more difficult for Russia, right? So Flamingo may be the beginning of that. It may not be, but then there will be a different type of heavy missile capability coming in the not so distant future that takes that role, right? Could be that short-range ballistic missile that Ukraine is working on right now, that reportedly also has entered into serial production, although we would also be a bit careful there because we haven't really seen anything. Or it might be the long Neptune, right, that was presented, or it might be a totally different design. But at one point or another, Ukraine will be able to complement its existing missile and long-range drone arsenal with a effective, heavy missile capability, and that poses real issues for Russia.
Yes, absolutely. And obviously, as we've had this conversation, it's just in the aftermath of those strikes on Kiev, which have been some of the deadliest in recent months. And European leaders are obviously outraged about that. And there is a growing, I think, acceleration, especially amongst the Franco-German axis, to increase sort of the interoperability, if you like, of European and Ukrainian defense industry and sort of things like that. So what could you see this doing for the broader European continental zone, so to speak, their own industries, and could the Ukrainians teach the Europeans a few things, maybe? Because it certainly looks that way, doesn't it?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, if the war ends one way or another, I'm sure that these Ukrainian missile and long-range drone systems are going to flood the European market. Right? I think right now the entire capacity, production capacity is essentially eaten up by Ukraine. But these types of weapon systems. That's exactly what Europe needs also, right? Affordable long-range strike capabilities, especially those smaller European states, right? I mean, of course, France, UK, Germany, they have the budgets and the industry to perhaps also sustain, larger, more sophisticated missile arsenals. But if you look at a state like Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Poland to some extent, obviously, right? These are states that are working with much more restricted defense budgets, but they, of course, still have a need for a conventional long-range strike capability. Well, so far, what Estonia, for example, has done, as well as its Baltic neighbors, they have bought, some ATACMS missiles, but Estonia, for example, they've bought a whole 18 of them, right? Because that is what they could afford in the moment. But Estonia itself knows that this is not enough, right? 18 missiles are not going to get you very far in a war against Russia. So, but now you turn it around, right? Now you say, okay, Ukrainian manufacturing capacity is open up, and European states can place orders. Then I would say, this would be a prime candidate for, or like these types of missile systems, these lighter, smaller mini cruise missiles, long range drones. that's a prime candidate for a lot of European states in terms of their acquisition programs. And of course, European industry is also not sleeping, right? We have a bunch of missile startups in Europe, as well as in the United States, and also some companies that are also a bit more established that are moving in the same direction, right? That are moving towards building missile systems that have, punch, but at the same time are affordable. So I think this is, again, right, some type of natural progression that we're seeing here, moving from, very expensive long range strike that was really only available to an elite number of states with large defense budgets towards affordable long range strike capability, essentially a democratization of conventional missile technology spreading to many countries. And I think by and large, this can be very useful for the European continent in the future as how it responds to the Russian threat. And this really demonstrates how Russia's cheating in the INF treaty, right, could really come back to bite them in the ass. Because obviously Europe was not part of the INF treaty, but Europe upheld the INF treaty by unilaterally saying, okay, we're not going to deploy those INF restricted systems. So 500 plus kilometer missile systems that are ground launched. But if we now get to this scenario that I've just outlined, where suddenly you have a whole bunch of European systems that are terribly interested in acquiring these missile systems because of the Russian threat, and they're widely available and affordable, then suddenly things look a bit different, right? Then I think this could really come back to haunt Russia.